Have you ever seen a series of television so bad that your brain slowly decomposes into a sort of gooey paste? Well, thanks to Netflix's Another Life, you could probably now suck my brain out of my ear with a straw. I remember a time when, as a general rule, Netflix originals were pretty good. But, well, let's talk about the show. Episode 1, Across the Universe. Ah yes, the beginning of my pain. The show opens with this pretty decent shot of a load of mirrors capturing the face of who we can only assume is our main character. Her being surrounded by mirrors all pointing directly at her face is a really nice touch. If not a little cliche, it does set up her ego really well without a single word being spoken. We get a couple of lines establishing things like she's selfish. Before she starts a shoot, it appears she's some kind of vlogger. She starts talking, but she can hardly begin before she's interrupted by a lighting malfunction. For some reason, she decides this means she needs to look out the window, and out of the window she sees a UFO flying towards the building she's in, that apparently none of the other people looking in that direction already had noticed. That's okay, you can't really blame them, it wasn't in any of the previous shots. We see the UFO flying towards a city, before the show decides that city doesn't exist anymore, and the UFO crashes in a field in the middle of nowhere.
There is a goddamn piece of alien technology sticking out of some field in the middle of nowhere.
Okay. Anyway, we then get one of the most generic title sequences for a sci-fi show I've ever seen, I think. Complete with Starfield and Random Planet, before we get introduced to our main characters. Oh, these are our main characters? Okay, I guess she wasn't... never mind that. Here we meet our main character Nico and our husband Eric, also her daughter, but fuck it. This scene is here to establish quite a lot of stuff, and it does it through quite a lot of poorly executed exposition.
You are a scientist, in charge of other scientists, all trying to communicate with an alien artifact that landed on Earth 6 months ago.
I'm pretty sure he knows most of that already. Anyway, in this scene we learn that that alien artifact that crashed on Earth was a big transmitter, that Eric, who's been in charge of researching it, has finally figured out where it's been transmitting to, and that Nico has been asked to lead a mission into space to that location. That mission is supposed to take 3 months to get there and 3 months to get back. Cut to a month later, Nico is on that mission and she's being woken up from stasis because there's been a complication along the way. There's a load of dark matter blocking their path that they didn't know about before they set off. At this point, we're also introduced to William, who is the ship's AI and is represented by a hologram, meaning like, you know, he can't touch anything and stuff. He discusses the dark matter problem with Nico. Apparently, they can't go through the dark matter faster than light because they'll be flying blind and they might hit a planet.
Well, we travel through the dark matter.
Wait, blind? We could hit a planet.
Do you know how unlikely that is? Planets are, you know, pretty big, but they are infinitesimally small when compared with the sheer size of space. There's a great resource for demonstrating this kind of thing called If the Moon Were Only 1 Pixel, which I'll link below. This whole map is of the solar system and it is completely to scale, so all of the proportions here are accurate. Let's have a look at the distance between the planets. Shit. That's quite a way, isn't it? Hang on. Hang on. Bear with me, shit. It's only gonna be a minute now. So we've had Mercury. Let's see what comes next. Well, I know what comes next, it's Venus, but you know, I have to fill this time with something. Oh, it's still here. Hang on. Just a sec. I'm sure we'll get there. Come on. Oh, there it is. Oh no, we might hit a planet. So that's the amount of space you can have in between planets when you're only considering one dimension in an actual solar system where planets are going to be more tightly concentrated than they are anywhere else. That's quite a lot of space. Now, of course, avoiding risks, even when they're very small risks, is fine. But this is on a similar level to saying, go outside? What if a thunderstorm starts and I get struck by lightning? Planets are ridiculously rare in open space. The show could definitely come up with a better reason to not go through the dark matter than this. Now, just wait until you hear why they didn't notice the dark matter in the first place.
How the hell did we screw that up?
Sensors on Earth missed it.
We didn't notice it because we didn't notice it. Shut up. We soon get introduced to the rest of the crew. Most of them are insufferable idiots that you will learn to hate through the course of this story. Having made the decision to go around the dark matter instead of through it in case they hit a planet, Nico informs them that they're going to be doing a slingshot maneuver around a nearby star. They try it, but it ends up putting too much strain on the ship for Nico's liking, so she calls it off. This man, Ian, is kind of unhappy about that. Also, you can see the ship turning and the arc that it's going around is fucking tiny. Like, do you guys not know that stars are big? This is Sirius A. It has a radius of over 1 million kilometers. Without doing the slingshot maneuver, their alternative is to just take the mission much more slowly, which will add months to their journey. They figure out a way that they feasibly could do the slingshot maneuver and save that time, but the ship's AI informs them that it's risky and that there's an 11% chance of failure if they employ that method, and failure in this case means they all die. Obviously only an idiot would take an 11% chance of death over the infinitesimally infinitesimally small chance of hitting a random planet while traveling through space.
We could hit a planet.
So I guess this crew, who was specially selected for one of the most important missions of all time, are all idiots, because the debate they then have isn't deciding between traveling at light speed through the dark matter or taking the much longer path around the dark matter. It's should we take the slow path around the dark matter or do the slingshot maneuver with an 11% chance of killing us all. Going through the dark matter isn't seen as an option. The debate comes to a standoff between Nico and Ian. Nico believes they should take the slow, safe path, whereas Ian believes they should take the quicker path that might kill them all. The only reason he gives that he wants to take the faster route that might kill them all is because he wants to get home faster. Or as he puts it, there are people on Earth waiting for him that he wants to get back to. He also, without making any other arguments in favor of that decision, keeps saying it's the best thing to do for the mission.
Nico, please. This is our best shot.
What the fuck? No, it's not. This is the risky shortcut that you want to take because you want to get home faster. How is this your best shot? Anyway, Ian says he wants to get home faster because there are people waiting for him. Nico says that if you kill everyone on the ship, then they're going to be waiting a lot longer, you fucking dipshit.
If we take a shortcut that destroys the ship, they're all on their own.
To which Ian responds,
And if we second guess every single decision, we will never make it there.
"You're the one second guessing the decisions, you fucking idiot! Your captain is ordering you to take the slow route, to which you go, nah, I want to risk killing everyone though. It's faster." This is the core of the conflict for the first episode. A guy wants to get home faster, so he wants to risk killing everyone. And then keeps trying to tell us that it's the best decision for the mission, despite providing no evidence of that. The story happened because this member of the crew is an idiot. Why did we recruit him? Shut up. Well, he's supposed to be the antagonist. At least the crew don't side with him. Oh fuck, that pause means there's gonna be a bait and switch here, doesn't it? Ah, shit, they do side with him. They get so pissed off with Nico's decision to not kill everyone that they mutiny.
Excuse me?
You're putting the mission in danger, and so I am relieving you of duty.
She's putting the mission in danger. What the fuck? No, that was you! Okay, so Nico obviously refuses to give up her command, so they beat the shit out of her and put her into cryosleep. I'm sure she's gonna stay in there for a really long time. Then we have a scene where Ian persuades the rest of the crew that weren't present for the mutiny that Nico was unfit for command, and all the necessary people recognize his new authority. They then get ready to do the risky slingshot maneuver, all very well aware of the 11% risk. It goes critically wrong, and the ship takes massive damage. So August, a member of the crew who's not annoying enough for me to have mentioned yet, goes and wakes Nico up after like 3 seconds of her being out of the action. Nico returns to the rest of the crew, and they just start taking her orders again, as if they weren't saying that she was mentally unfit for command like 2 minutes ago. What the fuck is even the point of being captain of the ship if the crew is just gonna take orders from whoever they feel like at the time? Anyway, Nico saves the ship, but they all get lost in the process and have no idea where they are. Now, there are a couple of scenes in this episode where it's made pretty clear that there are other crew members in cryosleep who can be woken up if any of the acting crew need replacing.
Now, if you're uncomfortable with the situation, I get it. It's up to you. We put you back in your soma tube, wake up your replacement.
Oh great, if I'm asleep I won't care that you're putting me through an 11% chance of death. Okay, I'm getting distracted. The point of showing that clip was the line at the end where he says, "I can wake up your replacement." It's clearly established that there are other crew members available to be woken up. So Nico, being a sane and rational person, should obviously replace all of the crew members that mutinied against her because they wanted to risk their lives so that they could get home faster, right? I mean, they beat the shit out of her, you know. Seems like the kind of thing that would get you replaced, you know? But no, Nico keeps all of those crew members on, including Ian. She considers doing something about Ian, and only Ian, not the other mutineers, but we get told the equipment to put people back into soma sleep is non-functional. That's the only reason we get that she doesn't do anything. Can't put them back to sleep. I guess the only other choice is to leave them as acting members of the crew. Can't relieve them of their duties, can't confine them to their quarters. No choice but to let all of these incompetent, treacherous idiots keep running this incredibly important mission. In this instance, Nico didn't do the rational thing because, well, the plot needs to happen. Hey, just like how she didn't want to hit a planet. Nico decides it's a great idea to spend some time alone with Ian doing repairs on the ship. Ian tries to sneak up on Nico with a knife and she reacts by kicking him into a wall of electricity. Fuck it, that sounds feasible. What did he even expect to happen if he managed to kill her? Like, oh guys, the captain's mysteriously vanished. Guess I'm in charge. Actually, they would probably be dumb enough to fall for that, wouldn't they? While all of that was going down in space with Nico, there was also a subplot going on Earth, which is mercifully much shorter. Eric, Nico's husband, is still in charge of researching the alien artifact, and we get to see some of that research in action. How is he researching it, you ask? Well,
Cue pigeon sounds.
he's playing at pigeon noises. Okay, well, let's see what the justification for this is. It could literally just be that he's playing at random stimuli to see how it reacts. And that wouldn't be too bad. Surely he doesn't think that pigeons have some kind of innate quality that means they can communicate with aliens. That would be crazy. Here's his line of logic.
But hear me out. So the artifact emits something called infrasound.
Yeah, human ears can't pick them up, but elephants can.
Alligators, whales, and pigeons.
This thing did not travel across the galaxy to talk to birds.
Of course not, General Dubois, but
What if we can get the birds to talk to it?
I like how they dismiss that woman's idea as like, oh no, that would be silly. Of course it didn't come here to speak to birds. We're just going to play at pigeon sounds, because that's probably something it's going to respond to. I don't really need to tell you why this is stupid, but I'm going to anyway. There is almost no logical through line here. The fact that it emits something that humans can't perceive with their senses, in this case very low frequency sound, or infrasound, doesn't mean it has any kind of connection to the random assortment of animals that happen to be able to perceive that thing. Your TV remote probably emits signals using infrared light. There are snakes that can see frequencies of infrared light. This does not mean that there's a connection between TV remotes and snakes. And it certainly doesn't mean that there is a connection between TV remotes and hissing noises. Thankfully, for the sake of my sanity, this strategy doesn't end up working. He doesn't get any kind of result from doing this. But I'm fairly sure that that's not because the show actually realizes how dumb this idea is and that it would never work. In fact, I'm pretty confident that the show actually thought it was a genuinely clever idea. I'm fairly sure that the only actual reason that this fails is for the structure of the story, so that we can see two scenes of failure before the final scene of success. Although I personally count every scene of this show as a scene of failure. In this attempt to communicate with the artifact, he plays it Mozart. His logical throughline here is that in 2026, a group of scientists beamed this music towards the star to which we now know the transmitter is transmitting. Wow, that actually has a logical throughline. They might have heard this song before, so let's play it to them again to see if they recognize it. That works! Well done! That's much less batshit. Unfortunately though, the writers still managed to demonstrate that they don't even have the most basic understanding of simple science. In this case, how sounds work. Because the artifact emits infrasound, Eric wants to play the music to the artifact in infrasound. He first plays it normally in a way that a human ear can perceive, and then drops it down into infrasound. Here's how he phrases the instruction to his team that that's what he wants them to do.
Drop frequency down to 1 hertz a second and drop it into infrasound.
Drop frequency down to 1 hertz a second and drop it into infrasound. A hertz is by definition something happening once per second. Him saying lower it to 1 hertz per second basically demonstrates that he just doesn't know what that word means. And this is such a basic thing to get right. I mean, I learnt this in middle school. But this is also something just so simple and easy to Google. The science should not be this egregiously wrong in a science fiction show. Anyway, he plays at the music in infrasound, nothing happens, and the scene ends. The last scene of this in the episode is him still waiting for the artifact to respond. His boss comes up to him to fire him, and just at the last minute, the artifact does respond. It shows them some pretty colours, and it plays the Mozart back to them really, really loud. Or at least it's supposed to seem like it's really loud. In actuality, it's very, very clear that it's just been dubbed on afterwards. He takes his hands off his ears before he's even had time to react to the fact that the music has stopped. Anyway, he celebrates, and that's the end of his story for this episode. And what a bad opening episode it is. For every problem I've highlighted, there are easily plenty I haven't. In this scene, Eric points a tablet with a camera on it at his daughter, and the holographic phone call at the other end is for some reason able to produce a perfect image of the back of her head. Scientific explanations for things like why they're lost by the end of it continue to be flimsy. This member of the crew is too fat to fit in the stasis tubes we get shown. All of Ian's dialogue. I could go on doing this for a very long time, but I think you get the point. This show is bad. There are countless little problems, countless medium-sized problems, and countless huge problems. Characters make completely stupid decisions that make absolutely no sense, just in service of furthering the plot. How did any of them ever get to the positions they're in?
Cue pigeon sounds.
Well, maybe we'll find an answer for that in episode 2, Through the Valley of Shadows. Although, of course, I've already seen it, so I know we don't. The show is just dumb. The episode opens with the scene of Nico telling the rest of the crew that she's killed Ian.
This was an accident, right?
Ian Yerxa was a threat.
Are you saying you killed him?
Yes.
But she failed to mention anything about how Ian had a knife on her. She just decides not to talk about that part. Instead, she just says,
He was a threat to the ship, to the mission.
Fuck you, he was a threat.
He cared more about being in command.
You don't know that.
so this guy had got violent with her before because he thought she wasn't appropriate to lead the mission. Then, when they were alone, he'd started talking to her about how he didn't think she was appropriate to lead the mission, then snuck up on her with a knife, and Nico decided not to mention any of that. Anyway, because this episode needs a plot, suddenly their oxygen reserves fail and they lose basically all their oxygen, and estimate that they only have enough oxygen left to breathe for 5 more hours. They decide to use those 5 hours to look for a source of oxygen that they can use to replenish their depleted supply. They plan to search on planets. They detect a planet, scan it from a distance, and find that it has oxygen on it.
Alright, we got an atmosphere. 60% nitrogen, 30% argon, 10% oxygen.
Nico wakes up a new pilot to replace Ian for the mission, who flies them down to the planet in a shuttlecraft. There, they mine oxygen crystals from inside a cave. So if the oxygen is in those crystals, like part of their chemical makeup, how do they plan on breathing it exactly? Why would they have equipment that allows them to extract oxygen from mineral? Oh, fuck it. So they collect all the oxygen they need and put it in this small briefcase. Yes, I'm sure the entire crew will be able to breathe for several months with that amount of oxygen. But there's a complication while they're down there. It turns out the planet has a surprise moon. Hang on. How did they not notice that the planet had a moon exactly?
We see it.
Does anyone care to explain how we missed an entire moon?
It was in such a low orbit, it didn't show up on my first radar scans.
Oh, well, it's showing up now.
Oh, okay, it was in such a low orbit that it didn't show up on their scans. Wait, fucking what? It's a moon! So remember what they can detect by scanning the planet?
Alright, we got an atmosphere. 60% nitrogen, 30% argon, 10% oxygen.
Oh, also a moon! Moons can't actually orbit that close to a planet. There's such a thing as the Roche limit. A moon like this cannot exist within that limit. The moon then causes the ground to start blowing up. The science continues to be stupid and the crew are in danger. Most of them escape just in time except the pair in the cave. Nico is faced with the decision to go back and save them, or just leave, ensuring the safety of the crew and the mission. In a move that I genuinely didn't expect, she leaves, making the tough decision to ensure the safety of the mission while letting 2 people die. Oh, just kidding, this show isn't interesting. They show her flying away, but the only reason she flew away was to subvert audience expectations so that she could fly back and rescue them. Man, I'm glad that happened. For a second there, I thought we might have some moral ambiguity. It's much better to just have a cliche saved at the last minute moment. This story suffers from all the same problems that the story of the first episode does, but puts its own unique spin on them. Cause and effect is the baseline of storytelling. Things like stakes are absolutely built on cause and effect. It's all about how one event progresses to the next. And when the reasons that events take place don't make sense, the whole thing falls apart. The stakes are completely destroyed by the knowledge that at any time the writers might just pull something out of their ass to serve what they want to happen in the story. You know, something like a moon! A skilled writer, or even a competent one, can cause the events that they want to happen in their story to happen without demolishing all semblance of logical cause and effect. Anyway, this episode also has a couple of subplots. Nico isn't dealing very well with the knowledge that she's killed Ian. We also keep up with Eric's antics on Earth. We see him get told that Earth has lost contact with Nico's ship. Shortly after that, he gets tracked down by the vlogger from the beginning, who we find out is called Harper Glass. She asks him some questions, which he refuses to answer, about whether or not the ship is safe, or if the fact that they've lost contact with it means it's been destroyed, because she wants to report the information to her followers. And after that we see him work some more on the artifact. Basically nothing happens except we get that cliche that really needs to die, where a character who's been trying to figure something out recently, in this case Eric, is having an unrelated conversation in which someone says a word, and then they go, "A word." A word! And it makes them realize something that's related to the problem they were trying to solve earlier.
I answered exactly 0 of her questions, but somehow she kind of got out of me everything she needed.
Yeah, she filled in the gaps.
Filling in the gaps.
It's not what we're hearing, it's what we're not hearing.
Exactly.
It's not what we're hearing, it's what we're not hearing. Really? Come on, how many cliches do you want to cram into these few seconds? Man, it must suck for the people who originally came up with this dialogue that's been just copy and pasted into everything. Imagine having loads of people using what is essentially your writing and never getting credit for it. This leads to them figuring out that there might be a hidden message in the way that the artifact is playing the Mozart back to them. And that's the end of their story for this episode. Speaking of the end of this episode, there's actually a cliffhanger. Just as the episode is about to end, on the ship with Nico, one of the crew, who hasn't been annoying enough for me to name yet, starts violently convulsing like a xenomorph is about to erupt out of her. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Instead, the show just cuts to black before we know what's happened. I can't wait to find out what happens next in Episode 3, Nervous Breakdown. This title is actually a pun. You'll realize why soon. The episode starts with a flashback to Nico and her family finding out about the UFO that crashed at the beginning. Not really sure why it's here, it's not at all relevant to the episode at hand. We don't really learn anything new here, it's pretty pointless. Moving on to the plot of the actual episode, the story sees the crew dealing with an alien pathogen they picked up on the planet they landed on last episode. Of course, we already start the story with one sick character. The next person to start exhibiting symptoms is Nico, who instead of going goes blind. And the third character to start displaying symptoms is Michelle. I haven't mentioned her yet, even though she's been really annoying throughout this whole show. Basically, her character is that she's an asshole and annoying. For example, here's a scene of her from the first episode.
You reach 27, you might as well cut off your balls because nature is gonna do it for you.
Why 27? Why not 26 or 28?
27 Club. Oh my god. Amy Winehouse, Demetrio, Silly and Glass. All brilliant and all dead by 27.
This is how we're introduced to her, as a character who irrationally thinks the number 27 is special because of all the billions of people in the world who have died. 3 of them have died at the age of 27, and someone who acts like you're an idiot if you don't immediately know what she means when she says the 27 Club.
Oh my god.
She's an asshole, but not in any way that actual real assholes act. She just comes across very much as, oh, the script told me I need to be antagonistic.
After 27, it is all cowardice all the time, until one day you wake up and you are ancient. You should not even get out of bed, let alone lead a mission across the galaxy.
Upside is you die old, so.
Wow. So sad. Yikes.
She's also one of the idiots who mutinied and beat the shit out of Nico in the first episode. Now, she's not completely one note, by which I mean there are moments in which she's not screeching at people, but in episode 3 we get this scene.
What did we manage to do? Exactly what did you do, Javier? Oh, you helped. He helped. Great, everybody gets a fucking ribbon. I don't need your help sending a goddamn email show. We're all gonna die, you realize that, right? First Petra gets sick, now Nico, who's next?
Slightly later on from that, she tries to murder Nico, but apparently this is the virus making her go crazy. On my first watch through of this, I genuinely didn't realize that there was supposed to be something wrong with her. But no, these are symptoms, apparently. They figure out that the virus is airborne and that everyone on the ship has been contaminated by it. They say that the disease attacks the nervous system and therefore the symptoms of it are completely unpredictable. Hence Petra having spasms, Nico losing her sight, and Michelle continuing to act within her character. I'm guessing that's bullshit science, but I really don't know enough about this area to really comment. All I can say is that it doesn't ring true to me. Now, of course, the problem with having bad science is that if someone who's watching actually knows that the science is wrong, it's going to completely break their immersion. And there's no real reason not to get the science right. The danger introduced into the story by, for example, the moon that broke the Roche limit could just as easily have been introduced by, say, a volcanic eruption or an earthquake. The show very clearly wants to be taken seriously, but then shits all over itself with mistakes like these ones. That is, again, assuming this part is scientifically inaccurate. I don't fucking know, but neither does the show. Anyway, having established that anyone who's not in soma sleep on the ship is infected with this disease, they decide that the appropriate course of action to take is to just chill out for a bit. You see, the first person who displayed symptoms, Petra, her symptoms have gone now, which they take to mean they probably don't have to worry, everyone else's symptoms are probably going to disappear too. It's not like Nico is literally still blind because she's carrying an alien infection. There's no need to run further medical tests or anything like that. So everyone, including the ship's doctor and the ship's biologist, just chill out for a bit and have a couple of drinks. The thing that absolutely baffles me about this one is that them doing that is in no way important for the plot. The show just sort of decides that they should be irrational here, for no real reason. Anyway, then Petra's nervous system falls out. I'm not joking, that's what they wrote. The stages of this alien disease are, first, something completely random happens to you, then you feel fine again, and then your nervous system falls out. For the 3 people watching who need me to tell you this, that can't happen. They may as well have written that her brain fell out through her ear. Like, not even that it dissolved and fell out through her ear, that it fell out of her ear in its, like, completely solid form. Just squeezed on through. Nico decides that their best course of action is to flush all of the crew and the infected air out of the airlock and wake up a replacement crew. I can't really falter for that, it makes sense to me. They believe they're all condemned to death, so they may as well make sure the mission stays safe. At this point, it's probably worth mentioning Bernie. He blames himself for bringing the virus on board the ship because, well, he's the one who brought the virus on board the ship. There's actually a brilliant scene where he's getting accused of being an idiot, and he defends himself by listing everything he's been through since the mission started. Only the writers get the events of their own show wrong? Let's go through that scene now.
I've been through the following. Mutiny.
Yep, there was a mutiny. It was infuriating.
The ship's spinning like a merry-go-round.
While there's been a lot of turbulence on this mission, at no point was the ship spinning, but I guess he could be confused, maybe?
A very public electrocution/execution that left a very distinct smell of burnt hair and flesh floating through the ship.
I mean, Ian did get killed, but it was in no way public. It was in a completely private room with no one else there, so no.
Crash landing on a rogue planet.
Again, no. Landing on the rogue planet went completely smoothly.
And a freaking volcanic eruption.
No, that was a surprise moon. Now, I'm willing to accept that it's possible all of this was deliberate. The guy he's talking to wasn't awake for all of those parts, so maybe Bernie is supposed to be lying here to make himself look better. The problem is that this show has gotten me to a point where I can't tell anymore. Characters have been saying clearly accidentally stupid things through this whole thing, so how am I supposed to tell the difference?
Pigeon sounds.
While everyone else is getting ready to throw themselves out of the airlock, Bernie is trying desperately to find a cure. Because the show is just a patchwork of cliches, Bernie's attempts fail, then at the very last second he accidentally stumbles upon the solution, and is like, oh my god, that's it! He accidentally shines some gamma rays on a sample of the pathogen and they die, and he's like, oh my god, now my nervous system doesn't have to fall out. Oh, also this guy dies. The crew are literally about to flush themselves out of the airlock when...
Wait! Bernie's coming with news.
Wait, no! I have a cure!
What, a cure?
The virus wrecked us.
Being saved at the last minute by someone bringing a surprise solution? Wow, does this show not know how to do anything else? Here's a point. They had to flush the entire crew out of the airlock because they were all infected. But the entire crew is getting ready to flush themselves out of the airlock without Bernie. And, you know, if they leave him in the ship, that makes their entire sacrifice redundant. Despite that, William has to tell them to wait before Bernie arrives. And he's only coming because he's found a cure. I guess if he didn't find a cure, they would have just left him in the lab to infect the new crew that wakes up. This is just another piece of writing that doesn't make sense in service of the plot being able to happen. Again, in something that's overwhelmingly competently written, this wouldn't be a big problem. But this is how this entire show is written. Events don't happen because those events would happen. But again, the question of does this story actually make sense? Does the plot actually function? Is thrown completely out of the window to deliver us a formulaic, paint-by-numbers story. Anyway, so they've discovered that the pathogen causing the disease is obliterated by gamma radiation. Just a reminder, by the way, the pathogen is airborne and in all of the air in the ship. That's why everyone is infected in the first place. But the pathogen is obliterated by gamma radiation, so they pull up by a nearby star, stand by one of the ship's only windows, and soak themselves in gamma. Apparently, this solves the problem of an airborne virus in a ship where most of the rooms don't have windows. The gamma rays don't give them immunity or anything, it just kills the pathogen. So what's their plan to sterilize the air in all of the rooms of the ship that don't have windows? Like, basically every other room on the ship. That air is going to remain infected, so they're all just going to get sick again, and so is anyone else new that they wake up. No, just don't ask questions, this works, okay? It just works. It just does. Oh, by the way, they all exposed themselves to gamma radiation until they were visibly in pain? Well, those pained looks on their faces definitely make sense, because gamma rays basically kill all living cells, but according to the show, the only symptom they experience is they're all sterile now. I guess the gamma rays decided only to kill the cells in their junk. This is like someone being shot in the head with a bazooka and going, oh no, I've lost my sense of smell. Anyway, also during this episode, they managed to fix the soma sleep tubes, so they all go back into soma sleep, so that like the rest of the journey can go faster for them. But then there's an episode cliffhanger where Nico wakes up and discovers like, oh, the power is out and something is hunting the crew. Sounds cool. Hope they don't just reveal this is all a dream 10 minutes into the next episode, that'd be pretty shitty. Or would it actually make for the best episode of the show so far? Well, you'll find that out in a bit, but let's do the Eric subplot of this episode first. It goes like this. Harper continues to pester Eric for information he has on the artifact and on Nico's ship. Well, after the third time of her asking him for information, he decides enough is enough. So he challenges her to a trivia quiz under the conditions that if he wins, she has to leave him alone, and if she wins, he'll tell her everything she wants to know.
My work's classified, so I don't share that with anyone.
Anyone who can't beat me at a pub quiz, that is. The trivia quiz scene is also really dumb. It's free of anything plot breaking, it's just got one small problem that's really funny to me. So the multiple choice answers appear on a screen and they're color coded, right? And to make this pub quiz all futuristic, participants indicate what answer they've picked by pressing a ball, which then glows in the color of the answer they've picked. Really bright so that like anyone else taking the quiz can see. Like, forget it being easy to peek over at what other people are answering, this system makes it hard not to look. There's a big green glowing thing in the middle of that table. Anyway, Eric wins, but it's later revealed that he's decided to give Harper the information anyway for reasons that we don't yet know. Which brings us to episode 4, Guilt Trip. That shot of Saturn is fucking gorgeous, by the way. Episode 4 is by far the best episode of the show, by which I mean it doesn't have enormous plot-breaking problems. Through the previous 3 episodes, there are a couple of things that we've learnt about Nico's character. 1, that she misses her family, which, like, yeah. And 2, that she had a mission about 10 years ago that went tits up and half of her crew died. Her ship was near Saturn when a complication put it in danger. Her decision resulted in 10 crew members dying, but the rest surviving. And this episode focuses on that. Well, it focuses on that after the first 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes are an extended fake-out, in which the show pretends that the ship is under attack by some hostile creature that we never see. Like, half the crew get killed, and then it's revealed it's all a dream. You could literally just start the episode here and you wouldn't miss anything important. It's literally completely irrelevant, so I'm just gonna not talk about it and skip to the parts that actually matter to the story. A few minutes ago, talking about the last episode, I set up the question, is this dream fake-out pretty shitty, or does it lead into the best episode of the show so far? And the answer is both. The episode isn't well written, it still suffers from a lot of the same problems the previous ones do, but this is the first episode where if someone told me they really liked it, I wouldn't be baffled as to why that could possibly be the case. The story itself is still held together by a few flimsy explanations and characters acting completely irrationally for the sake of the plot, but this episode at least tried to do something that wasn't just a bunch of tropes and cliches thrown into the vague shape of a story and then held together with blue tack, craft glue, and the power of belief. It turns out the Soma sleep equipment is broken again, and it broke halfway through Nico being put to sleep. As a result, she's halfway between the states of safely under and awake, which is preventing them from waking her up. To add more tension, the system is hemorrhaging power and is going to run out and shut down in a short while. If it shuts down while she's in there, she'll die. For the moment though, she's having incredibly vivid dreams about those things that have been troubling her. The guilt of leaving her family behind on Earth as she goes on this mission, and the guilt of being responsible for a lot of deaths on one of her previous missions. For some pretty contrived reasons, it's decided that she can only be woken up once she's worked her way through that shit, and come to terms with all of that guilt. Again, the actual reasons that the story is happening are pretty fucked, but for a change, the story itself is actually interesting enough. First we establish all the guilt that she's feeling. Then, to try and deal with it, she lives out a fantasy of saving everyone on that previous ship. That doesn't help. She realizes that she just has to accept that she made the decision she made, so instead of living out a fantasy, she stands by the decision she made the first time and makes it again in the dream. This episode actually does a good job of establishing the guilt and then working its way through it. The scenario itself, while the means to actually get to it were contrived, is, to my knowledge, original. A coming to terms with your past story isn't groundbreaking, but it's okay, and certainly more than I expected from this show at this point. Character motivations are consistent and all make sense in this story, and I'm very glad that the final solution was her just accepting that things are the way they are. It does still have its problems, probably the biggest of which is the fact that it uses its first 10 minutes to just bait the audience with stuff that ends up being completely irrelevant to the story. The episode is far from well written, but it does show improvement. This episode doesn't have an Eric subplot and instead has a subplot with the rest of the crew that are actually awake. It's executed almost adequately and there's very little noteworthy about it. Bernie realizes that if they can't go back into Soma sleep for the rest of the journey, they're going to need more food and they're going to run out of food before they get to their destination. They discover that there's a moon that they could take a 4 light-year detour to go visit that may support life, so they decide to take that detour to see if there's anything they can eat there. Nico wakes up to discover they're on that detour and she's not too chuffed about it.
Michelle found a moon that could possibly support life.
Possibly. So you don't even know if this moon has anything we can actually eat?
So apparently the crew don't know whether this moon supports life or not, but then in that same scene, they're able to use their ship's scanners to zoom in so far on the planet that they can literally see individual trees. But no, the crew has no idea if it supports life or not. They just don't know. Oh, also in the last episode, it was a minor plot point that their long-range sensors were down, and that they were flying blind because of it. But I guess they forgot about that. Anyway, the episode ends with them finding out that there's another artifact like the one on Earth on this moon. Episode 5, A Mind of Its Own, is a very different beast to the previous 4. While the previous episodes were their own self-contained stories that had elements of an overarching plot within them, this is almost entirely set up for future episodes. Loads of new plot points get introduced that don't get resolved by the end of the 40 minutes. A very basic overview of the plot is that they land to gather food and study the artifact. They discover that this artifact is older and run down. They find a piece of the artifact that's fallen off and take it back with them. And they don't leave by choice, they get chased off the moon by these weird bug creatures. Over the course of that time, a few different things happen. Bernie gets a twig stuck in his leg, which later results in an infection. The episode ends with this unresolved as he's going back to the ship to get proper treatment. This character, his name is Sasha, gets left alone with the artifact, starts hearing voices, specifically his own voice, then gets pulled into the artifact by his reflection, and the next time we see him, he's acting odd, and he sees shit. Again, it's himself. Again, this goes unresolved by the end of the episode. A little babby version of one of those bugs sneaks onto the ship. Nico and the pilot Cass find a load of flowers that make them feel high when they're near them. William glitches out and goes offline, and then there's a fire in the hangar, which all goes unexplained. There is an awful love triangle subplot between these three characters. Just imagine every love triangle cliche ever and you know what this plot is like. It ends in a scene too horrible to describe where he kisses her and then she kisses the other guy, seemingly into both of them. It seems this plotline is unresolved as well, which unfortunately means we're going to be seeing more of it. It's worth mentioning that there's no way they had enough time to gather really any food. The food gathering portion of the mission was cut incredibly short by Bernie's infection, so they're definitely going to have to stop off somewhere else to get food if they don't want to land back here again. In terms of writing quality, it's fairly consistent with what we've got so far. It hasn't really done anything outrageous though, there are no surprise moons, but it's all set up. I'm fairly confident the stupid is yet to come when we find out what all of this stuff means. And by fairly confident, I mean, yeah. There is a lot of stupid from this episode condensed into the Eric subplot. Like there often is.
Pigeon sounds.
So remember when Eric gave Harper the classified information that she wanted just because he wanted to?
My work's classified.
Well, it turns out the reason he wanted the information public was in case anyone anywhere in the world had any ideas and could maybe help him figure out the coded message. He deliberately leaked government secrets, so... Well, at the beginning of this episode, he gets found out. Since he deliberately leaked government secrets about aliens, they try to arrest him, but he escapes and spends most of this episode's subplot on the run. Just kidding, that would make sense. Instead, they're like, well, we can't be too quick to judge, let's see if this actually works. Maybe someone out there does have a good idea. What the fuck? He doesn't get in any way penalized for this, they're just like, let's see if anything comes of it. Oh, apparently also since they released this information to the world, they've had hundreds of responses.
Okay, so there were hundreds of responses.
Hundreds? I get hundreds of responses when I ask people what they think of Star Wars films. This is world-changing information leaked by what's apparently the most popular news source in the world, Harper Glass. And they only get hundreds of responses? Okay, I guess there aren't that many people excited to release their theories on the new information about the alien artifact. Eric thinks that one of the people who responded is onto something, so he goes to visit Marcus Persson. Sorry, no, the character's name is Marcus Peterson. Apparently to make this trip, they all had to change their clothes. Marcus tells them two things. The first is that the waveform of the encoded message actually looks like the outline of the artifact. The second is that the message is binary of the RGB code for the color white. You spent ages studying this message and you didn't think maybe it's binary? You needed the creator of Minecraft to tell you that? This guy has done the simplest, easiest decoding ever. Why are you in charge of this research? Who hired you? On top of that, the RGB color code for white is just going to be the maximum value in all three columns. To express colors in RGB, you give three values, one representing red, one blue, one green. To get white, you turn all three of those values as high as they'll go. We normally measure this out of 255, making the RGB code for white 255, 255, 255. But we have no idea what aliens would measure it out of, so basically this guy has just seen a number repeated 3 times and gone, this must be referring to the color white. Fuck it. Episode 6 is called... The episode begins with Nico adrift in space and her ship flying away from her. We then have the title sequence, but the music is missing. It doesn't feel on purpose, but who knows with these people. We then cut to a title card that says 3 hours earlier. Whoa, Nico's gonna be in danger in 3 hours? I wonder what bullshit they're gonna pull out of their ass at the last second to solve it. Well, let's start by looking at the bullshit they used to manufacture the danger in the first place. Do you remember when William went offline in the last episode and there was a fire? Well, now apparently all the ship's systems are fucked. And now the ship keeps, like, exploding itself. Basically nothing on the ship is working, but what caused all this to happen? Why is the ship fucked? Well, a fire started in that small box. And now, like, everything on the ship is failing. From the gravity to William to now the monitors are exploding for some reason.
From one fire, shit for brain assholes who designed this tin pile of fuck better pray they never meet me in a dark alley.
Everything's connected, Michelle.
My foot wants to connect with your ass?
Oh my god, Michelle is being antagonistic. She must be infected with that pathogen again. No, but really, their excuse for one small fire knocking out basically the entire ship is that everything is connected. Why would you ever design a ship like this? Currently, in real life, we build spaceships with lots of redundancies, so that if one thing fucks up, something else will take over for it. You really can't be too careful with this kind of thing. But I guess in the future we've advanced so far that not only do we not have redundancies in our ships anymore, they're designed to break completely if one part fails. But what caused this fiery mess? Well, remember this little guy? Yeah, it chewed through a wire and now the entire ship is fucked. Great writing, guys. You really put the legwork in to get the story to the place you wanted it to be. So, how bad does the damage get? Well, the crew spends the first 10 minutes of the runtime trying to solve everything and get William back online. They get him to reappear, but since the whole ship is connected, he starts glitching out. He starts detecting fires when there aren't really any more fires, and because of the fires that he's not really detecting, he initiates an emergency protocol, which, because whoever designed this ship is a fucking idiot for the sake of the plot, the crew has no power over and can't stop. The emergency protocol involves ejecting the soma tubes and crew living quarters so that they can be sent home. Only they haven't prepared for this protocol, the life support systems are on one half of the ship and the food is on the other, so it's going to kill literally the entire crew if they don't undo it, which is kind of the outcome I'm hoping for at this point. So just to be extra crystal clear, the entire plot of this episode happens because a bug chews through a wire, which makes William detect a fire which isn't there, so he decides the solution is to kill the entire crew. This is equivalent to, let's say your car gets an oil leak, and it responds by locking itself so you're trapped inside it, and turning on the heating until you bake to death. Someone somewhere decided that the AI should be able to make decisions for the crew that can easily kill them if it makes the wrong call. They also decided that the crew shouldn't be allowed to overwrite those decisions, even when said AI is so flimsy that it can be completely knocked out by a fire in an unrelated part of the ship. They get a 30-minute countdown at the end of which the ejected part of the ship would enter lightspeed and they'd lose it for good. You'd think that if it was going to give them a 30-minute countdown to something, it would probably be to the ship separating in the first place, but then this episode wouldn't have a plot. But no, instead the protocol is to separate the ship right away so that nothing can be done about it, and if you don't have all the supplies you need, you just die. And then it gives you a completely useless 30 minutes in which nothing can be done for you to twiddle your thumbs, I guess. Like seriously, there's no point to this time at all. The crew isn't supposed to be able to cancel the protocol or reconnect the ship. The protocol prevents the ship's engines from being used, and they have to find a way around it to actually get the ship back together. The crew figures out a way to put the ship back together, which involves Nico doing some work on the outside of the hull. She does what she needs to do, but is told to hurry back inside because they're jumping to lightspeed in under a minute, something that they still can't override. Well, Nico is too late, and the ship leaves without her. There's no kind of atmosphere, she's all alone, more or less, and then they come back and save her at the last minute. Man, this show needed more of those moments, but they're not in the clear yet. Their exotic matter containment, exotic matter being the fuel for their faster-than-light travel, is failing. This threatens to cause the entire ship to implode. Man, that wire in that unrelated part of the ship must have been really important. For incredibly contrived reasons, the only way to stop the ship from being destroyed is if Michelle goes inside the dark matter containment and makes a cum face. She dies. Man, she looks so bad there I could almost believe she was exposed to loads of gamma radiation. I suppose this is supposed to be the end of a redemption arc for her, but it's a pretty crap redemption arc. Basically it goes like this. Throughout this entire show, up to about 10 minutes before she actually dies, she just complains about everything.
All you've done since day one is fucking bitch and complain. Can you just try for once to think about somebody else other than your fucking self?
Cass actually said that to her earlier this episode, just so the audience is very clear that this character is selfish, remember that? Well, without them showing really anything that would have made her grow, other than her just being called out on it, she just magically overcomes that flaw and sacrifices herself. This is what an arc is. This episode's subplot involves Sasha. Basically throughout the whole thing he hallucinates himself in a red suit saying vaguely menacing things. It gets to him so much that he goes to throw himself out of the ship. The hallucination basically just says to him, "Don't be a bitch." He says, "What else can I do?" And the hallucination says, "Let me in." Next time we see him, he's acting sinister. Episode 7, Living the Dream. Hey, so remember the really great piece of writing about the RGB codes? Well, this episode starts with a conversation about what the alien's message was, but this time they refer to it as...
He recognized the pattern of gaps in the puzzle as being...
RGB hex code for white, I know.
They refer to it as hex code or hexadecimal code. This is actually a different kind of code. Instead of expressing the color as 3 values, you express it as a string of 6 digits. The hexadecimal code that represents white is FFFFFF, which is appropriate. I do feel we need, an F for this show. They've now referred to these 2 different forms of color code interchangeably, almost as if they don't know the difference between them and couldn't be bothered to Google it. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say when Eric said RGB code, what he actually meant was hexadecimal code. Well, according to Marcus and also everyone else, they received the message as binary. What is noted in hexadecimal as FFFFFF, or white, in binary would be 24 consecutive number 1s. Marcus has said that he thought it was binary because there were little noises and big noises, meaning the little noises were 0s and the big noises were 1s. Which means the message must have just been 24 consecutive noises. Essentially, they've just sent us the number 24. From which Marcus went, "Ah yes, they're clearly referring to the colour white." And then he was right, because the show doesn't realise how dumb that is. This episode's main focus is on Eric, with what happens on the ship being the subplot. Based on Marcus's incredible findings, they decide that the response the artifact is looking for is to have white lights shone at certain parts of it. They do that and a door opens up in the artifact. First they send a drone in to see what they see, and they see Sasha. And they're like, what? Then Eric goes in and probably regrets not bringing a torch to the place they've already seen as completely dark. But fuck it, what can you do, eh? The artifact starts conjuring up Eric's memories. He's in a lecture hall, which we're told is where he met Nico. He sees a younger Nico and looks to be a younger version of himself. There's also an equation on the board which we're told no one's ever been able to solve. Eric talks to Nico for a bit, sure that she's an alien avatar. Fake Nico tells Eric that the problem on the whiteboard is possible, and he starts actually solving it to his own surprise. But then before he can finish the solution, a fake version of his daughter appears and he turns his attention to her. He leaves to cosplay as me. The show's obligatory military idiot goes to take a team of soldiers into the artifact. This team also includes Harper Glass for contrived reasons. Before they even get into the artifact, they can see through the door what the real Sasha is doing on the ship right now. He sees them, then the artifact turns black and then releases a pulse that fucks up everybody in the nearby area, including Eric's daughter. I should probably mention her name is Jana, but it doesn't matter. The subplot on the ship sees a seemingly possessed Sasha asking all of the crew about what their plan is if the aliens turn hostile. Will they fight back? What will they do? What weapons do they have? How can they fight? He's trying to get information. He ends up finding out about something called Operation Brimstone. Basically, the Sylvari's faster than light drive produces a lot of energy, and that energy can be fired like a beam and destroy a planet if it needs to. Sasha tries to figure out if there's any way he can prevent this.
Is there any way to stop it?
Well, the ships are weapons, so you'd have to destroy the Salvari, which is easier said than done.
He says it's easier said than done to destroy the ship, when literally the entire plot of the last episode was that the ship was nearly destroyed because a bug nibbled through a wire. And now the plot is going to depend on the Sylvari being hard to destroy? Just light a random fire, dude, everyone will die. The reason he gives that the ship is hard to destroy is that William protects us from everything. Which is true until the ship takes minor damage, then he'll probably kill the crew. Anyway, Sasha probes the mind of this guy whose name I can't be bothered to tell you, to try and find a way to turn off William. Has the show actually just forgotten that the entire plot of the last episode revolved around William being disabled by accident? Anyway, this is the part that people on Earth walk in on somehow, bringing us to the end of the episode. Also, the love triangle gets continued, which I'd rather shit in my hands and clap than talk about. We also find out that Bernie took some of those flowers that get you high off that moon. This episode is in many ways like episode 5, in that it's mostly setups. Everything that happens in this episode is left open-ended with no resolutions. It certainly has its share of really bad writing, but we don't know what most of these events mean to the story yet. So until they're contextualized and given meaning, we can't really comment on whether or not they make sense. Oh, also Harper got sucked into the artifact. Episode 8, How the Light Gets Lost, is, for this show, strong. The ship has made its way back to where they were at the beginning and is preparing to enter the cloud of dark matter. Apparently they're still concerned that if they go through it at light speed, they might hit a planet, so they go through it more slowly. The ship's Dr. Zane starts monitoring the crew's biometrics as they enter the cloud of dark matter to see if it has any effect on them. Also, Sasha makes everyone a salad. Yes, this will be a plot-significant salad. A salad? You know, that reminds me. Didn't they go to that moon because they needed to collect food? What happened with that? They definitely didn't collect any while they were there. So I guess they just took that 4 light year detour because they felt like it. It ends up seeming like the dark matter does have an effect on the crew. They all get emotional. For most of them this means they get horny and start fucking. Nico gets William to simulate Eric. Zane and Bernie get together of all people. The love triangle have a threesome. It's all very gossipy teen drama, and the show executes it okay. Oh, in case you're wondering, all the people in the background are holograms that William made so they could have a party. It's certainly not well written, but it's more tolerable than the rest of this show is. Okay, so it actually turns out that the thing having this effect on the crew isn't the dark matter like they thought it was. Actually, Sasha put some of that flour that Bernie had in the salad that he served everyone, and he'd got everyone high. He plays it off like this was an accident, but we know this has got to be part of his plan. Oh, by the way, that guy conveniently doesn't remember having his mind probed. One funny thing that really stuck out to me was the Dr. Zane, when he was monitoring the crew's biometrics, got really excited when he thought the dark matter was having this effect on them.
Dark matter is the ultimate serotonin enhancer, and I discovered it. I could cure depression.
Then when he finds out that instead of the dark matter, it was actually a drug having that effect, he gets pretty disappointed. I am pretty sure he goes by he, by the way. The scene I'm about to play you has copyrighted music on it, so I'm just gonna do the lines. I'll never be in the DSM. It wasn't the dark matter, it was drugs. Garden variety drugs. Yes, Zane, I'm sure that if you found that you could cure depression by flying people into a cloud of dark matter, that would be a huge discovery. But discovering a drug with the same effects? Nah, no one will give a shit about a drug that cures depression. The whole crew sleeps it off, and Guy who got mind probed wakes up to discover that the ship is denying him access to any rooms. The handprint scanner tells him that this is because his ID is already in use. He finds Sasha and accuses him of using his access code. Pretty sure you're not using access codes there, dude. You're using handprints. Pretty sure he didn't steal your handprint, but fuck it. Sasha mind probes him again, and this time absorbs his entire mind. But he still can't figure out a way to shut down William. Dude, do you not remember the plot of this show? Anyways, onto one of the worst aspects of this episode. Remember how Nico got William to simulate Eric? Well, they have sex as best you can without being able to touch each other because one of you is a hologram. When Nico next wakes up and is embarrassed about what she did, William says that he's in love with her. Now, I can't pretend the show is pulling this out of its ass. It's not a surprise moon. It's very clearly set up that William is advanced enough of an AI that he can feel emotions. Right from the first episode, when he gets upset about the mutiny. I can't blame him, that upset me too. By the way, this zoom in on his face, which is supposed to be in a serious scene, I think is priceless. I want to see one of you using this as a reaction gif on Twitter. Nico is a bit freaked out by that and asks him to delete the memories of their sexy times. Anyway, William starts glitching out because Nico rejected him. You want to have your AI have emotions? Okay, fine, be my guest. But if you then want to tell me that that same AI, which is critical in many ways to the function of this ship and has the power to kill the crew, can be completely obliterated by feeling sad? Why the fuck would you use that AI for such an important mission? The fact that William can be basically taken out like this is beyond contrived. So obviously Sasha takes advantage of this and uses the opportunity to completely completely shut down William. Oh, also the crew discover that there's a piece of alien technology in his brain. The Eric subplot for this episode sees Eric's daughter Jana getting treatment after she was knocked down by the artifact, and he finds out that despite her being perfectly healthy this morning, since the artifact blasted her, she has cancer. Also, Harper comes back out of the artifact, but we don't find out what happened to her while she was in there yet. Which brings us to episode 9, Heart and Soul. It's nearly over. This story sees the crew trying to survive as Sasha tries to destroy the ship. Shouldn't be too hard. His first strategy is to disable the cooling system on the ship's particle accelerator, which, now that William is offline, is something he can do. We're told that if the accelerator overheats, the ship will be destroyed. We then have a hilarious scene where Bernie gets covered in shit. The joke is that he gets covered in shit before he goes into the particle accelerator and turns the cooling system back on. Is now a good time to mention how a lot of the screens in the ship are clearly just tablets glued to the wall. While this is all happening, they also try to get William back online, but all Nico manages to bring up is an empty shell of the old William that doesn't have any of his old memories. All he can say is that he's experiencing a critical system error and can't access any of the files that he's actually made of. Nico tells him that the real him must be in there somewhere. Oh boy, I really love that cliche. After Bernie manages to successfully turn the cooling system back on for the particle accelerator, Sasha switches to a different plan and steers the ship towards a black hole, piloting them towards it at light speed. Oh no, they're going at light speed through the dark matter, they might hit a planet. They start getting pretty close to the black hole, but Nico realizes that they're now not too far from their destination, which is the star system that the artifact has been transmitting to. I wonder why it's been transmitting there, I can't wait to find out. So she orders the crew to bail out on the ship in the shuttlecraft and head for the planet that they initially set out for, while she stays behind and tries to save William and the ship. Hang on a second, at the beginning we're told this is a 6-month journey, 3 months to get there and 3 months to get back. Then when Nico is first woken up to deal with the cloud of dark matter, that's 1 month into their mission, which obviously would mean it's 2 months until they reach where they're going. At the beginning of episode 8 they actually enter that cloud of dark matter, and they're at the same place they were in the beginning of the series 1 month into their trip. They have a party which lasts like 1 night at most, then immediately after they sober up they have to deal with Sasha's antics, fix the cooling system, then discover they've been rerouted towards a black hole, and they're almost there? Before they got high, they would have had 2 months left on their journey. In fact, more than that because they were traveling below light speed. And now they're nearly there, so I guess that party lasted 2 months? You could call this a nitpick, and it is. There are certainly much bigger things wrong with this show than the timeline not stacking together properly, but it really shows what a staggeringly low amount of effort was put into writing this series. All it would take to fix this problem would be to change the 1 month later title card at the beginning to a, say, 2 month and 29 days later title card. That way you can still have a delay caused by them not wanting to travel through the dark matter, but then when they finally do make their way through it, it's reasonable to expect that it would only take a couple of days. But just like the rest of the show, no thought has been put into how all of these elements actually fit together. It seems at no point did they actually sit down to try to figure out, okay, how long would these events actually take? Because if they had, I imagine they would have picked up on stuff like this. But back to the plot, the crew leaves in the shuttlecraft, and Nico goes into soma sleep, which allows her to communicate with William. No idea why that works, it just does. This whole show has been poorly written, but this part, her scene talking to William and the whole arc surrounding it, is the first part with really uncomfortable connotations. In this situation where Nico slept with William, the show has been portraying Nico as the one at fault and William as 100% innocent.
What I did to you is unforgivable. I ruined it. I ruined everything.
Nico believes she's in the wrong, William believes Nico is in the wrong, and the meta-narrative of the show believes Nico is in the wrong.
It is my fault. It's all my fault.
No, this is Sasha's fault. He's the one who let that alien into his head.
I am talking about William. He's in love with me. And I knew that. And still I had him turn into Eric, and then we were together. And then afterwards I pretended like it didn't happen.
Nico took advantage of poor, sweet, innocent William, and then cast him aside when she was done. But let's talk about the circumstances under which she actually slept with William, shall we? She was under the influence of a drug that William knew made her entirely irrational. There's even a scene where she thinks that they need to open the airlock because she thinks her husband is outside the ship despite the fact she knows he's on Earth. William sees this and is even the one to tell her she's being irrational, but then when she says, "Do me, William," he's like, "Yeah, okay." She didn't even take this drug by choice, she was slipped it against her will. Do you think maybe she's in a state where she can't say yes to something like this? It's not as if he has to take her orders, the show's made it clear William is completely sentient. He is by pretty much every measure the one who took advantage of her. But then when Nico wakes up and is sober and no longer wants anything to do with what just happened, she is portrayed as absolutely in the wrong. What the fuck? No, I don't think the writers put these implications in here on purpose. I don't think they really thought it through, just like, you know, the rest of their show. But this is really, really uncomfortable. Please stop. And the main character arc for this episode is, of course, William learning to forgive Nico, when clearly what he should have done is not have sex with her. This resolves when Sasha finds the soma tube that Nico is asleep in. He tries to kill her with an axe, she runs away, he catches her, is choking her to death, and then right at the last second, William saves her life. But how did he save her life, you ask? William's not a physical being, he's a hologram. So what could he possibly have done to save Nico's life?
I blasted the deck with electricity.
Oh, okay, he blasted the deck with electricity. It wasn't established he could do that, and why can he do that? Why the fuck did the people who were building this ship go, we should put in an option to flood each deck with electricity, it could be important. Well, no, obviously, the writers wrote themselves into a corner and couldn't be bothered to think of an actual solution that made any kind of sense, so they just pulled something out of their ass again. If you want to have something happen that's this important, it literally saves the main character's life, set that up beforehand, or you establish a precedent that whenever a character is in danger, just anything can happen that saves them. Okay, so if he flooded the deck with electricity, why is it that Sasha is completely incapacitated while Nico is completely unscathed?
He's taking the brunt of it.
Oh, okay, cool, thanks. This fixes the ship, this fixes William. Apparently he can just decide to turn himself back on despite the fact that Sasha initiated the shutdown protocol for him. He went into the workings of William and shut him down, turned him off, but William just decided to turn himself back on. What's the point of having a shutdown system for the AI if the AI can be like, nah, I don't want to be shut down? This is followed by another really stupid scene where William tells Nico that we've not got enough power to escape the black hole. So they cut open the back of Sasha's head, plug a wire into the thing that's attached to his brain, and use that to power the ship so they can escape. Great. He survives this, by the way. He's alive in the next episode. Apparently they just have a wire that's compatible with this completely alien piece of technology. Know exactly how to perform the surgery to plug it in, and fuck this. The episode ends with the ship and Nico rejoining the rest of the crew, and them arriving at the planet they've been after this whole time. The Eric subplot sees him, rationally stressed out that Jana, his daughter, has cancer. Oh, also remember how Harper was in the artifact? Well, she has one of those alien things on her brain now. From her, we find out that these aliens are called the AAAAAHHHH, but she spends most of the runtime trying to manipulate Eric into letting her out by saying that she knows how to cure Jana's cancer. My pain is nearly over! Episode 10, the final episode. Hello. So, what are the answers to all of the mysteries raised by this show? Why was the artifact transmitting a signal to this planet? What was that signal? What was it for? What did it mean? Why did the artifact give Eric a load of puzzles? Why did it simulate Nico and his daughter? Why did it almost help him solve an impossible equation? Why was there a dilapidated, run-down version of the artifact on that moon they found? Why? Well, tune in next season to find out. This episode sees Nico taking a team down to the planet they have assumed the artifact came from. They find that there's an artifact on the planet and they visit some alien ruins. Once inside, they meet an alien and its computer. Now, we do get some answers to some questions in this episode, although really they're just kind of setups for new questions. And basically all of those answers come from the computer just telling the crew some stuff. The computer tells Nico that this isn't actually the planet the AAAAAHHH are from. This is a planet called Zakir. It tells them that the AAAAAHHH are bad.
Do you know what they want?
The AAAAAHHH only want one thing. Destruction.
Oh my god. They find out that the AAAAAHHH have an empire consisting of over 300 star systems. But wait, if they have that many, why is it that the artifact on Earth was transmitting to this star system specifically?
We tracked an AAAAAHHH signal straight here.
It came from an artifact. Not from us.
Oh, okay. Thanks, show. They find a mass grave of Zakir natives and discover Akayan implants in all of the skulls of the bodies. From this, and this alone, Nico concludes,
We have got to deal with the problem that is staring us in the face, and that is that fucking artifact. It isn't gonna stop until it destroys every last Zakir. Okay. Okay.
Wait, hang on, why is it you've decided that the artifact needs to be destroyed? Why have you decided that's the solution here? You still have literally no idea what the artifact is for? Just that it transmits stuff and is in some way related to the Akaya. As far as you know, it could be some kind of symbolic monument, or how the Akaya on this planet communicate with the Akaya on other planets. You don't know that it specifically is the thing killing the Zakir natives, and you don't know that it's not going to stop until they're all dead. Why did you say that? One thing that you certainly do know is that proximity to an artifact isn't the thing that lets the brain machines work. Sasha was possessed for ages and he was nowhere near an artifact for all that time. So what do you think destroying the artifact is going to do? You literally have no idea. But based only on the information that the Akaya are basically brain parasites and the artifact was sent here by them, you decide that the solution to their occupation of this planet is to destroy the artifact. Seems like the kind of decision you should probably spend a bit longer on. You know, maybe this decision should wait until perhaps you know what the artifact is. Just a suggestion. Don't worry, she doesn't make the decision to destroy the artifact completely rashly, that would be silly. First she asks that random alien they found living in a cave whether or not it wants their help, and it says, yeah, sure. And then she decides to blow up the artifact. Yeah, I'm sure the random native living in a cave will know all of the intricacies of the situation and will know exactly what should be done. Well done, Nico, you clearly have all the information you need to make an act of war against an alien race. The episode has a few subplots, but they're literally all just setups for cliffhangers, so they're not really worth going into because none of them go anywhere. There's this bit where they experiment on the brain implant that was shot round and round in circles for some reason. William accidentally makes another AI that becomes his daughter. She doesn't actually do anything. Harper uses the most obvious manipulation tactics in the world to get Eric to take Jana into the artifact, and we don't see what happens after that. And Harper escapes and tells the world that the Akaya are here as friends. The episode and the season ends with the crew back in space. Having destroyed the artifact on Zakir, they detect 5 unidentified ships flying towards the planet. They're all identical to that artifact that landed at the beginning in a field in the middle of nowhere right next to a city. They blow up Zakir and cut to credits. This is quite possibly the worst written show I've ever seen. It doesn't just have plot holes, it is plot holes. That's what it's made of. The crew of this incredibly important mission feel like they were chosen by someone waiting outside a random nightclub in San Francisco, asking anyone who got themselves kicked out if they wanted to go to space. I wouldn't trust these people to build an IKEA cabinet together without stabbing each other, let alone initiate first contact with aliens. From incredibly early on, it's established that characters don't take actions and events don't occur because it would make sense for those things to happen, but because the writers have decided that they just should happen, regardless of whether or not they're plausible in the slightest, and regardless of whether or not they contradict things that have already happened in the show, even when those previous events are the core premise of previous episodes. And it's all in service of a mystery that goes mostly unresolved, but the answers we do get don't even make sense. For example, the only thing we actually learn about what the Akaya want is...
The Akaya only want one thing. Destruction.
Which clearly isn't even fucking true, because the end of the episode sees them easily destroy the entire planet. If they only wanted destruction, that would be what they did in the first place. Clearly they have some greater plan than that, and this computer has seen exactly what the Akaya have done to the planet it's on, so how come it doesn't know? The fact that this even got made in the first place with a relatively decent production value is an insult to any writer who actually puts work into their craft. It would be a red flag to me if I saw the first draft of something and it was this bad. If a second season of this got announced, I would cancel my Netflix subscription if I was the person who paid for it. Which brings me to the title of this video. Is this really the worst show of 2019? Well, yeah, I wouldn't have called the video that if it wasn't. Now, obviously I can only consider shows I've seen, but I would be very surprised to learn that something worse than this had come out this year. Well, excluding stuff that isn't made by major production companies. I've now spent an hour and 7 minutes talking about this show, but I feel like I've only really scratched the surface of its problems. And if I was so inclined, I could make an overview of the problems in this show that would make this video look brief by comparison. But that's all I've got for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this long... It's a long... and thanks for watching it. Before I go, I'd just like to say a special thanks to Brandon, Walter King, Sarah Nash, Michael Drell, After Show Reaction, Johnny DL, Nick Grabar, Thomas D. Passio, Andrew Rettek, Stupid Webcam, Brianna Sinclair, Megan Stagel, Chris Newman, Zachary Christensen, Was Davison Productions, Kyle Caldwell, Anna, Cameron Bishop, Will Beeson, Jack McKenzie, Elias Bauer, Zach Van Stanley, Robert Davison, Samuel Albert Mel, Morgan Allen, Alex M. Mears, Jaden Goodwin, Jacob Hanshu, Jason King, Brad P. Fada TV, Monica Tabauda, Gara, Timothy Green, Marco Perry, Suge and Stan, Mr. Gently Benevolent, Noah Luke, and Paul Daniel. You do have to understand that if you're my patron, me mispronouncing your name is part of the deal. Bye! Surprise! It's a moon.